What's up, my moist little summerberry trifles? This is Rob from A Gay Guy Plays, and for all of y'all who've been asking in the comment section why my skin is so shiny, it's called moisturizer. Do y'all not skincare or something? Listen, I'm gonna go ahead and leave a link up in the top corner to my lifestyle channel, just in case you need a little help with that. Regardless, today on the Daily Grind, I'm gonna be making good on a promise that I tossed out a couple videos back, where I said that I would go ahead and share how I would personally rework Inaros. Now, in that comment section, as well as, surprisingly enough, the Warframe Wikia comment section, there was a consistent narrative that ran through it all. Basically, you could toss Inaros in the sun and he'd still find a way to survive. He's like a cockroach. He ain't dying anytime soon. However, his gameplay left a little bit to be desired. It just wasn't engaging enough for people to really enjoy him. Yeah, he can't die, but that doesn't necessarily make him fun to play. So I figured that I would go ahead and focus on engagement and interactivity in this specific rework. I went ahead and took a look at all of his skills, knocked out a couple that were just like, why are you even there? Refreshed them with some new mechanics, and then kind of helped everything synergize a little bit more. So without ado, let's go ahead and jump on in. So first things first, let's go ahead and address his passive. Now, I didn't want to touch his whole life restoration upon finisher kill. We're going to leave that as it is. I feel like that is one of the pinnacles of Inaros. And one of the things we don't want to do when it comes to reworks is rework something so differently that the players who originally loved that frame no longer want to play that frame. We want to still keep the essence of Inaros. It sounds like a cologne that would be very sandy and very bug-like. Probably not the greatest. Regardless, I did want to go ahead and change his Sarcophagus, however, because I did find it to be a little finicky. Now, for those of you guys who don't know what that is, basically anytime Inaros is downed, he enters this coffin state where he can emit this beam of energy that will draw an enemy in and slowly leech away their life. You can also do this to allies to pull some of their life to help you get restored and get back on your feet. Allies can also attack the beamed enemy in order to help the restoration go faster, which is something that a lot of people don't necessarily talk about, but at the end of the day, I still find it to be a little bit finicky. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to make the ability more AoE-like, where basically you enter the coffin and then you have this big sandstorm that comes around you. It doesn't necessarily suck enemies in, but what it does is it'll affect an area of enemies that'll slowly have their life leached and help you get back on your feet a bit faster. In addition to that, of course, I wanted to keep the same interaction with allies where they would be able to go into that sandstorm area, and this also ties in with his sandstorm ability. We'll talk about that in a second. But basically, go in that sandstorm area and kill enemies to kind of contribute to your revive restoration, I guess we're going to end up calling it. But the biggest part of this that I wanted to add in is a visual effect. It would go ahead and indicate exactly what the area of effect of the revival sandstorm around the coffin would be, and make it a tad bit easier for allies to figure out, oh, if I'm in this area, I can go ahead and kill whatever's there in order to help bring him back on his feet. I think that's very important. Because of the gameplay of Warframe, right? We want to keep it moving, but if we can kind of slide through, kill a couple things on the way, and help our ally get back up, we can do that as well. Instantly was not the word that I was planning on using there, but in addition, I figured that whenever you would go into your coffin state, it would also instantly consume all of the Sandshadows you have up to help restore your revive bar. God, I can't find a better way for that. But basically, I wanted to add that mechanic in because in this specific rework, Sandshadows are going to be more of a focus. Now, while we're talking about Sandshadows, I did want to make a note that I believe it is a max of 3 Sandshadows you can have at once. I'm just pointing that out because we'll reference it a little bit later. Now, let's move on to his abilities. The first one of which is Desiccation, which I'm not going to touch. And like I stated earlier, the reason I did not want to touch this is because it feels like one of Inaros' core abilities. And again, I want everybody who loves Inaros to still continue to love Inaros even after the rework. However, his second ability is where it gets a little bit more engaging, more advanced. So instead of Devour, which, by the way, I saw some people trying to defend Devour in the comment section, and I was like, really? So for those of you guys who don't know, Devour basically sinks an enemy in quicksand and makes it go, woo! And you can hold down the button to draw them closer to you. And you can go ahead and devour them. And what it basically does is you go like this, and you restore your health over time. Now, while you're going like this, you're doing your little sand devour dance. Of course, you're invulnerable at that period of time. However, that is really shitty for Warframe gameplay. Now, while your allies can do this as well, let's be real. Warframe, you're constantly on the move. So why do you want to sit there and do this to restore your health when there are multiple other ways that you could end up doing it with Inaros, like tossing out a Scarab Swarm, right? So you can heal your allies with that. You don't need your weird Devour dance. And while it does synergize with Sandstorm, where you can toss down multiple Devours and you can spin around in a Sandstorm, both of those abilities are bullshit and annoying. So I get that some of y'all feel a way about them, but I don't feel like they're strong enough abilities mechanically for us to really feel that they are necessary. Plus, when you're in higher levels and you're devouring, you know that those enemies take forever to consume. So instead, I'm going to be replacing, wow, Rob's not good at words today, that with Feast of the Scarab, or Scarab Feast, or Feasting Scarabs. Listen, maybe I'm not the greatest with names. I'm not good at remembering names, I'm not good at coming up with names, but basically, what I want you to do is picture a combination of Sarin spores and Atlas's rubble. Okay, that's what I want you to be picturing as I'm pitching you this ability. Basically, what happens is Inaros curses a single target. So he tosses this curse out. Upon death, the original target is converted into a Sandshadow. So keep that in mind. It is the original target that is converted into a Sandshadow, and that's the only one that gets converted. Upon their death, it spreads the curse to surrounding enemies and refreshes the duration of all existing Sandshadows and also restores some of their health. The curse reduces enemy damage output and adds to his devouring bar. See that little callback? I want to make sure y'all that like Inaros was still eating and not going hungry because you know he out in the desert and he really needs some sustenance, right? Now, this devouring bar, it basically works very similarly to Atlas's rubble, where it slowly will deplete over time. So you can kill a whole bunch of enemies and it'll add to your bar, add to your bar, add to your bar, add to your bar. And basically what that bar will indicate is amount of bonus damage that is given to Inaros, as well as his Sandshadows. Now for Inaros, you know, we could stop at like 250 times damage. Listen, wherever DE wants to cap it for balance reasons, but what I wanted this to do was to really add some oomph to his Sandshadows. So whatever Inaros gets, I want his Sandshadows to get 3 times that much so that they feel like they're really, like, because at this moment, the Sandshadows kind of feel like they're just there, right? And a lot of the times, like, we don't really give that much of a shit about creating Sandshadows. They're just like a fun extra thing. But if you have insanely powerful Sandshadows, right, that can literally kill and like deal tons and tons of damage to these enemies, I think it would be another draw for Inaros. So not only are you getting the damage boost, but you also have this small army with you that is going to be able to output a shit ton of damage as well. Now, I did want to make note of the fact that we did have that limit of 3 Sandshadows, so it wouldn't cross over too much into Necros territory, but I'm thinking it's more of like a condensed version. You don't have as many bodies, but the bodies that are there are going to be massively stronger, as long as you are feeding Inaros and the curse, right? So I think that that's great. Also, you know, you get a little bit of survivability because you're knocking down the offensive capabilities of these enemies, and every time you kill one of those cursed enemies, it'll help restore some health to your Sandshadows and refresh the duration so you can maintain them. Now, when it comes to the Sandshadows, one of the things that I wanted to tweak, actually I have a couple things that I wanted to tweak, was number one, their aggression. I wanted to bring them up to like Wukong celestial twin levels of aggression. I want them out there and ready to fight. And in addition to that, I wanted to integrate the fact that whenever Inaros like moves past a certain amount of meters, that the Sandshadows would go with him, very similarly to Wukong. Really, we're trying to put the Sandshadows at the forefront of this kit and make them an actual thing instead of just something that gets overlooked. Now, we've got the bar, we've got the damage increase, so that way we have some engagement with Inaros, right? We want him to keep his Sandshadows up, we want him to keep his damage up, and this way he'll be able to scale a little bit better. Moving along to Sandstorm, I actually have two different variants of this. The first one is going to be an AoE around Inaros, and then the second one is going to be a targeted AoE. So I figured that, you know, I'd give some options. We'd still keep Sandstorm around so y'all could have your elemental Sandstorm, but right now in its current state, it does the thing that I hate the most, which is the Zephyr Tornado effect, where literally enemies are swirling around the outside of a cone and can kind of get flung around. It's hard for enemies to hit. You know, it's just a little irritating. But I know a lot of people do like that elemental Sandstorm, so I wanted to still keep that Sandstorm effect. But the first variant would be an AoE around Inaros and all Sandshadows, because I'm trying to make Sandshadows a thing, right? They would deal a small amount of damage, kind of like it does now. But the big thing is it would lower enemy accuracy and has a chance of staggering enemies, opening them up to melee finishers, very similarly to kind of like the Steel Meridian Blast effect. So they'd get staggered, you could do a finisher, it would feed into your passive. Enemies killed by Inaros create a Sandshadow, so just in case you don't want to keep recasting the curse, you can go ahead and kill an enemy in there. And cursed enemies will restore health each time they are struck by the Sandstorm. So very similar to Desiccation, but Desiccation around you and Desiccation around your Sandshadows. So that way you'd have a lot more like survivability without necessarily too much thought aside from keeping your bar up, because I figured that maybe keeping your bar up might be one of those things that takes too much mental engagement. And then the second version of Sandstorm I wanted to pitch was, instead of being centered around Inaros, he could actually target an area, which again would deal a small amount of damage, lower enemy accuracy, but also slow them and gradually strip enemy defenses. So think of shielding and armor and all that kind of stuff would come off in the storm, because I thought that it was very thematic to kind of like erode enemy defenses. And then again, enemies killed by Inaros create a Sandshadow. So this would create slightly different gameplay. Instead of a kind of like buff yourself thing, you could place these down strategically. And you know, if you want to like defend certain points, you could do that. And maybe you'd have like a limit of 2 or 3 depending on balance. But the number one thing I did not want to do was to add the strip enemy defenses to the area of effect around you, because I felt like that might be a little too overpowered. Let me know down in the comments below. He already sounds overpowered, let's be real with what I'm doing. He already sounds overpowered. So I feel like having the area of effect around him strip enemies as well was a little too much. If you set them in certain areas, at least it would be maybe a little more team friendly. I don't know. Let me know. And then last but not least, Scarab Swarm. I ain't doing shit, because Scarab Swarm, I can't even talk. Scarab Swarm is already great as it is. Basically, you're able to increase your armor, and then you're able to launch these projectiles from that armor that you've accumulated to go and CC enemies and heal in an area of effect around them. Maybe if they're caught in a sandstorm, maybe double the area of effect of healing. That would be kind of cool too. But I think that that's one of his core abilities that I just definitely did not want to touch in any way, shape, or form. Now, I'm really curious to know what you guys feel about what I've done to Inaros. Do you think that bringing his Sandshadows into the forefront a little bit more, make him a bit more engaging, the damage increase maybe? I don't know. Toss all of your feelings down in the comments below. Or maybe I've completely gone off onto a different tangent and you're like, that's not what I wanted for Inaros at all. Toss that down there as well, but you know, be respectful to me and my glossy ass skin. Regardless, that about does it for me for now. And as always, love somebody, hurt nobody, and touch your moisturized body. It's winter, y'all. It's dry out here. Moisturize. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.